Once, Asos felt truly unstoppable, and for a generation of young shoppers it was. If you were young, broke, trend-hungry, and living online, Asos wasn't just a store. It was a lifeline. Endless new-in drops, next-day arrivals, the thrill of opening 10 parcels you fully intended to return. It defined how a generation shopped long before brands like Shein ever existed. At its peak, Asos was valued at over £7 billion. Now it's worth a small fraction of that, struggling to hold on to the very audience it once owned. Somewhere between the pandemic boom and the chaotic years that followed, the company slipped, outpaced by cheaper rivals, weighed down by its own overconfidence, and watched by customers who slowly moved on. So, what actually happened? How does a brand built so perfectly for its moment lose the moment entirely? And can it ever get it back? Asos didn't begin as the fashion giant everyone remembers. It launched in 2000 under a name hardly anyone recalls today, as seen on screen, a niche website where you could buy the clothes you spotted in movies and on TV. But that idea landed at the perfect cultural moment. The internet was becoming personal, celebrity influence was exploding, and young shoppers were starting to want what they saw instantly, not weeks later in a store. Asos saw the shift before most traditional retailers did. And because it wasn't tied to real estate, seasons, or slow merchandising cycles, it grew into something the high street couldn't match. By the mid-2000s, Asos had already transformed from a novelty into a destination. The brand didn't need billboards or glossy ads. The website itself was the marketing. Thousands of new arrivals, daily refreshes, trend edits, student discounts, next-day delivery. It was the first time fashion truly felt aligned with the pace of the internet. By the early 2010s, Asos had become a kind of ecosystem for 20-somethings. It had its own language, unlimited delivery passes, the save-for-later graveyard, 40-page wish lists you'd never admit to anyone. You could browse for hours, try on entire outfits at home, send half of them back, and no one judged you. The system encouraged it. Asos wasn't just convenient, it made fashion feel democratic. And that mattered, especially for a generation that didn't grow up with luxury, but still wanted to play with identity, aesthetics, and micro-trends at breakneck speed. As the company expanded across Europe, Australia, and the US, its own label lines matured too. Asos Design, Asos Edition, Asos White. The brand stopped being a reseller and became a creator. They weren't following Topshop or Zara anymore. They were competing with them. And, for a stretch, they were winning. By the late 2010s, Asos wasn't just another online shop. It had become the online shop, the first tab you opened, the place you checked before a night out, the brand that understood young shoppers better than they understood themselves. A company born from celebrity copycat looks had grown into a £7 billion empire with global recognition and cultural influence. And at that point, it felt like nothing could shake it. The numbers were strong, the customer base was loyal, and the industry believed online retail would only rise from here. What no one saw coming was a shift fast enough and disruptive enough to turn that confidence into Asos's biggest vulnerability. When the world shut down in early 2020, Asos entered a level of demand it had never experienced before. With millions of people stuck indoors, online shopping became both entertainment and escape. Sweatpants replaced denim, leisure wear replaced office staples, and Asos became the unofficial supplier of the lockdown wardrobe. Orders surged, average basket sizes climbed, and the company suddenly looked like one of the biggest winners of an otherwise bleak retail landscape. Inside Asos, the message felt clear. This wasn't a spike. It was the new normal. The company doubled down on that belief. Inventory increased dramatically. The buying teams poured money into categories that made perfect sense during lockdown, but had no guaranteed future once the world reopened. And at the same time, Asos made its boldest move yet, acquiring Topshop, Topman, and Miss Selfridge from the collapsed Arcadia Group. It was a symbolic shift. Asos was no longer just an online retailer. It was positioning itself as a home for Britain's fallen high street icons. For a moment, the strategy seemed flawless. Asos had the audience, the momentum, and now the cultural cachet of brands that defined an entire generation. The press framed it as a power move, and investors largely agreed. The assumption, shared by almost every major e-commerce player, was that consumers had permanently abandoned physical retail. But fashion is never that predictable. Because the moment restrictions lifted, shoppers rushed back to stores. They wanted to try clothes on, feel fabrics, browse without a screen. The categories that had carried Asos through the pandemic, loungewear, basics, comfort clothes, became the very items no one wanted anymore. What had once looked like smart inventory planning turned into a billion-pound stock hangover almost overnight. And the Topshop acquisition, while culturally meaningful, didn't translate smoothly online. The brand's original magic had always lived inside physical stores: the music, the styling, the energy of Oxford Street. Online, that personality flattened. Asos could sell the product, but it couldn't replicate the experience that made Topshop influential in the first place. By the end of 2021, the illusion had cracked. What looked like structural growth was really temporary behavior under extraordinary circumstances. Asos had built its entire strategy on a version of the world that didn't last. And as soon as the real world returned, the company's pandemic success became its biggest liability. The fall didn't start with a scandal or a sudden collapse. It started with a misread, one that quietly set the stage for everything that went wrong next. By the time Asos recognized the misread, the consequences were already baked in. The company entered 2022 with £1 billion worth of stock it couldn't shift. The physical proof of a strategy built on assumptions that no longer matched reality. What had once looked like confidence now looked like overexposure. Clearing that stock didn't just pressure margins, it slowed everything down. Warehouses backed up, cash flow tightened, and the speed that once defined Asos turned into the very thing it struggled to recover. But the stock crisis was only the start. The second blow came from the outside, a cultural shift that moved far faster than Asos could. A new generation of competitors had taken over the screens Asos once dominated. Shein rewired expectations almost overnight. Massive hauls for the price of a single Asos dress, microtrends pushed at TikTok speed, and influencers who shaped shopping habits in real time. It wasn't just cheaper, it was more entertaining, more interactive, more in sync with how Gen Z actually consumed fashion. Within a few years, Shein was serving 1 in 3 British women aged 16 to 24, cutting directly into Asos's heartland. And then Temu arrived, pushing the bottom end of the market even further. Suddenly, Asos felt stuck in the middle, too expensive to beat ultra-fast fashion, too trend-led to compete with premium brands, too large and slow to pivot with the new retail rhythm. Meanwhile, second-hand platforms like Vinted introduced a different kind of thrill. One-off pieces, lower prices, and the small ego boost of earning money back. For younger shoppers, Vinted felt fresh and personal. Asos didn't. Even the website experience, once a competitive advantage, became a point of fatigue. Typing black dress and receiving more than 5,000 results wasn't empowering anymore. It was overwhelming. Rivals offered curated visual pathways. Asos offered endless lists. The contrast made the platform feel heavy in a category that thrived on lightness. Leadership turbulence added a final layer of instability. Nick Byton stepped down after years of slowing profit, and new CEO Jose Antonio Ramos Calamonte inherited a brand caught between generations. Millennials had aged out of Asos. Gen Z never adopted it as their own. In fashion, that gap is lethal. Financially, the decline was undeniable. By 2025, Asos had dropped out of the FTSE 250. Its valuation collapsed from over £7 billion to about £320 million. Orders shrank, Conversion slipped, and revenue declined across nearly every region. There was no dramatic crash, just a slow, grinding erosion. The kind that happens when a brand misreads a moment, misunderstands a generation, and underestimates how fast the market can turn. By the time Asos tried to reclaim its relevance, young shoppers had already rewritten the rules without it. When Calamonte stepped into the CEO role, Asos was no longer the confident giant it once imagined itself to be. The company wasn't looking for the next big idea. It was trying to regain its footing. The first step was practical and unglamorous, unraveling the stock mess that had slowed the business to a crawl. Clearing outdated pandemic inventory didn't just free up warehouse space, it allowed Asos to finally move at something close to its old pace again. Once the cleanup was underway, the company began reshaping the way it operated. Discount-led growth, once a defining Asos tactic, was pulled back. The goal wasn't to chase volume anymore, but to rebuild margins and restore some sense of price integrity. Buyers no longer placed huge seasonal bets. Instead, Asos leaned into a more controlled rhythm, the test and react model, which let it trial small quantities, scale the winners, and quietly retire the rest. By 2025, this system accounted for more than 20% of own brand sales, giving the company a level of agility it hadn't had in years. Technology became the backbone of the new strategy. Asos invested in AI tools that refined recommendations, curated products more tightly, and softened the scroll fatigue that had pushed younger shoppers toward competitors. Fulfillment became more flexible too, shifting the platform closer to a hybrid marketplace model without fully becoming one. It allowed Asos to offer variety without repeating the inventory mistakes that nearly suffocated it. And then there was the quiet relaunch of Topshop, Topman, and Miss Selfridge. No one expected these brands to recapture the electricity of their high street years, and they didn't. But Asos gave them clearer identities, sharper edits, and fewer distractions. The move signaled something important. The company was no longer trying to recreate the past, but instead trying to build a more coherent version of its future. Financially, the reset was slow but noticeable. Revenue remained under pressure, yet the quality of sales improved. Margins strengthened. Adjusted EBITDA rose more than 60%, and operating losses narrowed. For the first time in several years, Asos wasn't sprinting toward scale. It was trying to build a business that could actually withstand volatility. But stabilizing the numbers was only half the story. The harder question lingered in the background. Could Asos make itself culturally relevant again? Could it re-enter the conversation in a market where TikTok decides trends in hours, Shein trains shoppers to expect endless novelty, and secondhand platforms carve out emotional value Asos once owned? Operationally, the company was recovering. Culturally, the brand was still waiting for its turning point. By 2026, Asos feels like a brand standing at a crossroads. The company has survived its hardest years, stabilized the parts of the business that once threatened to collapse it, and rebuilt enough structure to support long-term profitability. On paper, the turnaround is real. Margins look healthier, returns are under control, and the era of billion-pound stock hangovers is finally behind them. But survival isn't the same thing as relevance. Asos once thrived because it understood its audience better than anyone else. Now that audience is splintered. Millennials, the shoppers who grew up with Asos, moved on to new lifestyles and new spending habits. And Gen Z, the generation expected to take their place, built their shopping routines somewhere entirely different. They didn't abandon Asos. They simply never arrived. That leaves the company in a strange middle space. Too established to behave like a disruptor, too large to match the speed of ultra-fast competitors, and too digital to recreate the physical world magic that once made brands like Topshop iconic. And that's the real task ahead. It needs a clear point of view, something that resonates with a generation raised on infinite choice, instant gratification, and algorithm-driven trends. The question is no longer whether Asos can operate efficiently. It's whether the brand can matter again. So maybe the real question becomes this: what would Asos need to look like for you to care about it again? Curious to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.